Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, then you see you. Good afternoon, and welcome to this next session. We're just finding some quietness in the room. Yeah, we are following a very successful session with a lot of very engaged people. Good afternoon, and welcome to this session on Principles of Universal Design in Education. Yeah, I'll move a little closer. My name is Camilla Royal. I am the Research Director at the Bevika Foundation in Denmark, and I have the extreme pleasure of being joined today by these two amazing women. I have Barsha Banerjee on this side, who is the Managing Director of Perkins School for the Blind in India. Barsha has a long and extensive background spanning more than 25 years in education, services, livelihood, skills development, and the growth of small and medium enterprises. On my other side, I have Jasmine Herschens, who is the founder of ForMind. You're based in Belgium, and you're a long-term expert, teacher, consultant, and researcher of universal design, as well as the Vice President of EIDD, Design for All in Europe. I myself, I am the Research Director of the Bevika Foundation in Copenhagen, and I have a background as an architect and a researcher and an educator, all the way along dedicated to universal design as a vehicle for inclusion. In this session today, we'll have a conversation. We'll open up and start a conversation on what is the concept of universal design, what is the potential of using universal design in education, and we'll also talk about universal design for learning, UDL, which is a concept and a tool of its own. So before we move on, let's just say we want to move through these three different themes. So what is universal design? What is the potential of universal design in education? And what are the sort of the main takeaways from this session further on? Universal design is first and foremost a value-based concept. It represents and insists on the fact that the one thing we share as human beings is that we all live with different and changing abilities throughout a lifetime. So in the context or the basic understanding of universal design, there is not a them and us, there is only an us. And this is one of the key notions of universal design. Universal design is also a tool that could be used in the design of all aspects of life, not only design and architecture, and it can also be used in education. In education, you could say that the physical design works in synergy with the pedagogical design, and as such, the universal design as a tool becomes the interdisciplinary means to actually secure inclusion. But first, before we go a little bit deeper into that, we want to talk a little bit about what is universal design and how can we understand the concept. What can it actually offer? Universal design as a concept is most and foremost a vision that represents an understanding of what it means to be human. That this one thing we all share is diversity and ability. It's a tool to inclusion. You can work with it as a value-based principle, as a process, but you can also look at it as a solution. It is written into the CRPD, where we have obligated ourselves when ratifying the CRPD to actually use and implement universal design in research, legislation, and education. And the important goal of universal design is not to make special solutions or parallel solutions, but actually avoid all the add-ons and instead consider universal design as actually a way to look at solutions as maybe more of a catalog of solutions, understanding that diversity in ability requires diversity in solutions. So universal design is not one solution for all. It is most often a catalog of solutions, diversity in solutions. Universal design is also a very different tool than accessibility. While accessibility in many contexts will maybe represent more of a tangible solution, an add-on solution, a ramp, a widened door, a bell to ring, or a lowered counter height, then universal design is a concept that we could use in all aspects of the way we design our society, which also calls for a multidisciplinary and an interdisciplinary approach to actually working with universal design. As you can all tell, I can talk about this for a long time, but I actually wanted to ask you, Jasmine, because you have a long-standing experience as a researcher, as a teacher, and a universal design expert, how you see the significance of universal design and how we can understand the concept.
Thank you very much, Camilla, for your nice introduction. And for my blind friends, I'm Yasmin. I'm wearing a blue jacket and a blue jumpsuit, and I have blue eyes. And I have a big smile on my face because I'm very happy to be here. Universal design has definitely a place at Zero Project. As Camilla said, it has been mentioned in the CRPD, the UN CRPD, and it's now a human right. And I like to refer and to point to Ron Mace, who actually defined universal design in the 80s. And he defined it as an approach to design which to the greatest extent possible can be used by everyone. And I repeat, he defined it as an approach to design which to the greatest extent possible can be used by everyone. So he didn't mean that you actually have a final result, like Camilla told you already. There's no fixed solution. It's actually a process. It's an approach for designers. And this is where design comes in. And this is also where our familiar definitions of inclusive design and design for all meet each other. It's all about design. Now, the huge challenge that the visionary mission of Ron Mace was that in the 80s, he still had to overcome activism and actually the awareness for disability studies and the importance of disability that was still needed in the 80s. So he didn't have that much support to talk about design, and that's why universal design is often compared or linked to checklists, regulations, policies, which are of course needed and very much needed in public environments, but in the core, in the heart, universal design, design for all, and inclusive design aims at a process of designing to make the art of living, which is different from accessibility, which is for us more a way of surviving in life. And that's a huge difference. And universal design requires an attitude, and this attitude can be educated. And so it's both important for designers to educate this universal design approach, but it's also important to teach our children from primary school already what universal design is and what it can mean to the world. So that's my approach, Camilla. I don't want to interrupt your time.
No, but thank you. We have time.
Okay.
But I just, I'm a little, I want to hear if you can say a little bit more about if we understand, if we are at the risk of using universal design as checklist, as add-ons, as policy and regulation, and have this understanding of it, what is it we are at risk of missing out on?
Yeah, well, I think if you use checklists, you might miss out different opportunities. And in the past 2 days, we saw how much disability can be a driver for innovation. And I think that's the importance. Universal design is actually needed to change the world. And if you stick to checklists, you don't evolve as a civilization. This is what this society makes it so, well, we are in a momentum for Design for All and universal design. We are ready for it, and it proves that we are ready as a society. So I really believe that maybe we should more stick to what Ed Steinfeld and Beth Talker talked about, universal designing, because it's an act, it's a process. And then we don't miss out on anything because we move on. And Selwyn Goldsmith, he says, we move towards an horizon. We will never reach the horizon, but that makes us improving and evolving throughout our knowledge and our knowledge transfer, and that's important, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And this whole understanding of universal design being so much more than just the built environment and architecture. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yes, well, it can be considered as an approach, and like you do at Bevika Funden, you actually call to action for all disciplines in society to implement universal design, from policymakers over designers, but also doctors. Everyone can apply universal design, and that is just the beauty of it. And I think we are in the age of designers. We need designers to change the world. So please come to us. We will be happy to help now we can.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So universal design in that sense is a tool, even a possibility, a chance, to actually have a different, assume a different approach to designing all aspects of society, including education, which is what we are here for at this Zero conference. And the concept of UD, universal design, has actually been developed into its own concept of universal design for learning, which is actually a specific theoretical approach and a tool to be used in inclusive education. Barsha will say more about it in a little while, but I'll just, I'll just say that that universal design for learning is also an example of how universal design is to be understood as diversity in needs require diversity in solutions and approaches. So working in your teaching with a built-in flexibility that could actually be adjusted to all students' strengths and needs is one of the key aspects of universal design for learning, and it focuses on these three target principles: representation, expression, and engagement. But so in order to move on to the potential of actually using universal design in education, and maybe even using universal design for learning in education, Barsha, you work hands-on with education in India every day. How do you see the impact and the potential of universal design in education? Is there one?
Thank you so much, Camilla, for raising that question. Before I kind of really jump into that, my name is Barsha, and I'd like to describe myself for my friends who can't see. I'm a woman in my late 40s, shoulder-length hair, wearing a green sari today, and I'm wearing red color. I think it looks like a red color glasses. And I think, thank you so much, Camilla, for raising that question. Because a couple of years back, even I didn't know what universal design of learning really was, right? And I think many of us don't know, and it's all right because it's an ever-evolving process, and it's a journey, and we all are learning. To talk about how universal design in learning is used in education, I'm going to right now limit my conversation to India context because that's where we are using it. And I'd like to really begin by just, we need to all understand that our classrooms or any of our programs are filled with children who have very different needs. All classrooms, and that's across, right? Children come from a variety of educational backgrounds. They all have different attention spans. They all have different learning and physical abilities. And each of them come from a variety of cultural backgrounds, and this is more so because in India, like being a huge country, every 100 kilometers, the language changes. So it's a different dialect, so it's a very wide range of children that we are talking about in the classroom. Now, talking about the potential of universal design learning, I'd probably say that, if we are looking at using universal design learning in education, it basically helps children transition from equality to justice. So and in between comes equity. Now, what is equality? Equality is basically providing the assumption that everyone benefits from the support that you get, right? And what is equity? Equity is that everyone gets the support. And what is justice? Justice is that all the disparities that we are talking of is diminished. But today, our aim is let's get just from equality to equity. Justice will come much later, but that's the journey that we are really looking at. So therefore, given in terms of the impact of potential universal design learning in education, in India we have the education policy, which is National Education Policy, which was revised and released in 2020. It's a beautiful document, and it's for the first time really talking about inclusion and universal design learning in classrooms that needs to be integrated, right? So these are a lot of initiatives which the government has actually taken to bring in the element of learning, which is available for everyone. And we are not really talking about children with disabilities. All children who come into the classroom, with or without disabilities, it's applicable for all children. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples, Camilla, in context of what's happening in India. And just to say that it's just a very small step that has been taken. Of course, the journey is long. It has just started. So there is, I know, you talked about the checklist is not really a tool. But in India, we have released a checklist because before that, there was no way of even assessing a child with disability. So there is a checklist which has been released, which is on a mobile app available to all the school teachers and where the data can be fed in. It's called Prashas. It's released by the Ministry of Education. Now that's the first step because I think for years, children would come into the classroom and they would just be labeled as, oh, they are not learning. But what's the root cause of not learning? Nobody knew because so therefore at least the first step is the Prashas document that I'm talking of. Incidentally, there is a very beautiful reading series that has been released, again by the Government of India, which is called Barkha. Incidentally, that's a name which is the same meaning of my name. My name is Barsha. Barkha, it's the same, it means rainfall. Yeah, so I feel good about it. A universal design tool based on my name. So, yeah. So Barkha is a universal design reading app series for developing early readers, early reading habits in children. So these are all tools which are available. So you can actually go download, get it, and it's all provided in terms of accessibility. It's all, in terms of accessibility, everything is there in place. The third thing that I'm going to talk about is, there is just a beginning of really creating teaching material in the Indian Sign Language. Just the other day, my colleagues, we were talking about, how sign language are so varied in all the countries. Of course, it's very contextualized. So therefore, so we have the Indian Sign Language. So there are some teaching materials which are being developed in the Indian Sign Language. So the point that I'm trying to make is these are some of the initiatives which the government has started. But is that something which is being implemented? Not really. In some of the schools which are working towards talking about universal design learning, there are small steps. So one of the biggest challenges that we are talking of today is the awareness around the concept itself, right? And I think that is extremely, extremely important. So, Camilla, you mentioned the 3 principles of universal design, right? And the 3 principles are basically backed up by all the neuroscience research. So the first one you said, providing multiple means of representation. So what is that? So basically it means the what of learning. What are the children really learning? So we need to understand that. What are the children really learning? The second is action and expression, right? So the how of learning. How are children really learning, right? So very, very important element. The third piece that you said is in terms of the means of engagement. And that is, why are they learning whatever that they are learning? So these are very important elements, and we need to address these 3 things when we are designing curriculum, when we are talking about teaching learning material, when we are talking about assessment. So it actually gets integrated in every piece that we really do, and it's not in isolation. It's just not for children without disabilities. It's for everyone. And I think the moment we get into it, there would be a transformative difference in the way children learn. And I think learning is a very important thing because it's just not about children being in school, children attending school, but really children learning. And learning happens all the time. In school, outside of school, when you are playing with your friends, it happens. So therefore, the principles of universal design learning really is integrated. So government has taken initiatives, but I think the journey is still long. Yeah. We need to start understanding and also build awareness about this entire concept, right from not only school curriculum, but also teacher development curriculum that we have. So therefore, it should really cut across the entire spectrum. So that's my point in terms of UDL in India.
Well, now you almost said it yourself, because I was going to ask, one thing is using UDL in teaching children and young people, but also teaching the teachers, actually training the trainers. Is UDL also, does it make sense in that
Absolutely,
context?
because at the end of the day, these are the educators who will be working with children, right? So they need to, as I said, when I opened that, every classroom has children with different needs. So if you don't understand the basic premise and philosophy of UDL, you will really not really implement them into a classroom. And UDL is a framework, right? It's a guiding principle which helps you develop. Yeah. So therefore, it's important that even when you're talking about teachers and educators, we need to really implement the same concept in their professional development as well.
Mm-hmm. So the 3 of us, while we've been talking, preparing and getting to know each other and understanding each other's background, we've also talked about this, what seems to be a huge difference in sort of our geographical, cultural setting that we span across the world, and can we actually learn from each other, or are the settings too different? Can you say a little bit about the importance about the context, and when is context relevant in UDL and when isn't it?
So while I spoke about what's happening in India, I think that's what I said, that Camilla, UDL is it's a framework. It's a guiding principle. So what's happening in India definitely can be used in terms of contextualizing to the other geographies. So therefore, it's very important that it kind of, it's open, it's flexible, it's adaptable. Yes. Yeah? And so therefore, how do you really bridge that gap? How do you really get the best practices across the globe into a forum where you're really talking about UDL? UDL, especially in India, is just they've just started talking and really building around it. But I'm sure there are countries which have been doing it for a while, but maybe doing it in silos. So how do we really get it out and really make sure that, I think across the globe, we are really using this principle of universal design in everything that we do?
Yeah, surprisingly, absolutely agree. But because I think this issue, it all stems back to the fact of understanding universal design as this very specific understanding of the things we share as human beings, and not focusing so much on the things where we are different, but actually we do share some things, and this concept of UDL can be implemented anywhere, really. But the complexity of it of universal design, as embracing all of us and all our differences, also requires knowledge. We have to sort of be very aware of that. It requires knowledge from different disciplines and lots of experience-based knowledge, user-based knowledge, but also multidisciplinary knowledge. This whole idea of actually learning from each other across all different types of silos. Let me see, I need to put on my glasses. So I'm thinking that time runs so fast, so we need to actually talk a little bit about what are sort of the three main takeaways that we, the three of us, see for you from this session, when we are to sort of talk about how can we actually use universal design in education. What would be the three main takeaways from this talk? How can you go on from here and actually apply and implement universal design for learning in education? Jasmine, do you want to start?
Yes. My main three takeaways. The first one, I would like to quote Nelson Mandela, who said, "Education is the most powerful tool to change the world." He called it actually a weapon. Well, if education is a weapon, what is universal design? I think you could call it a strategy to achieve what we actually aim for, a better place on earth. And we are here at the UN today, the United Nations, and we could consider us not as blue helmets, but maybe as green helmets in Zero Project, as designers who have the eagerness and ability to help this world change in a better place in terms of creating an attitude. If we see that people are in a battle with their environment, we can point out and offer new opportunities. And then the third takeaway I would give you all is that you may not forget that we are all designers. Each one of you sitting here and online, you're all designers in the world and in humanity. And if you are all contributing to design in life, you may never forget your inner child, because children are our mirrors and the best teachers in empathy and respect, and let that be the two most important ingredients to create universal design. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Jasmine. And Barsha?
Yeah, thank you. So I would probably say, in terms of the key takeaways, right? I think the fact that we've been working using UDL in some of our schools, the first biggest thing that I feel is that UDL has actually put the tag of disabled on the curriculum and not on the learner. It's the curriculum which is not fit for the learners to learn. So I think that's a very big thing. The second thing is in terms of it helps you to constantly make amends and give feedback and change your curriculum or modify to accommodate, because learner needs are very dynamic. So, UDL helps you and gives you that flexibility to do so. The third is UDL kind of, it's like, I am a firm believer, obviously, and I think all of you do believe that there's never one size fits all. It doesn't. So the third piece is in terms of the assessment, it broadens the way assessments really happen, adjusting to the learner variability. And that's what is very, very important in terms of how do you assess children? It's not the same. The way I need to be assessed would be very different from any other person. So I think for me, those are those three sharp, clear takeaways.
Yeah. And for me, also my takeaways also come through the conversations with the two of you. But I think the most important one is really this this understanding that universal design is very different from accessibility in the way that we see the person and understand what it means to be human. And for me, if there's one thing that you take away from this session, let that be the one. Because universal design insists on that the one thing we share as humans is that we all live with different and changing abilities throughout a lifetime. So, working with universal design or working with accessibility are two very, very different approaches to the way we actually approach design of our society and education. They're not mutually sort of exclusive. They're interrelated, but they're very different in the way they understand and see the person it is all about. And this also sort of points to the complexity of it, that if we are to include all of our differences, it requires a multidisciplinary knowledge field. It requires cooperation and collaboration, knowledge sharing across different regions in the world, different sectors and persons and networks. So go out, go find collaborators, go search for knowledge. Someone out there knows something that will help you, and vice versa. And don't be afraid to test and fail, and experiment and learn and share your failures with each other. It is the only way to learn. And then that universal design is a design that could be, in many ways, offers a paradigm shift in education, as well as in all other aspects of the design of our society, but in particular also education. Universal design for learning is a tool and a knowledge field and a method of its own. Let that be the last. Then I just want to thank you all for joining us today, this afternoon. Thank you to the Zero Project for shining a light on universal design and universal design for learning. And thank you, Barsha. Thank you, Jasmine, for joining me and sharing all your knowledge and insights. Thank you.